A keepsake is a powerful item in any person's collection. Something that can be held or used and reminds you of the generation that came before you can be a touchstone that provides both reverence and peace of mind. Today's game seeks to establish that presence from its lore right out of the admittedly gorgeous box. Fresh out of our NDA-imposed silence, this is Tellstones, King's Gambit, and our provided review copy comes to us from production house Riot Games' tabletop division. Riot is better known as making a video game, making the incredibly popular League of Legends, the MOBA in whose world we find Tellstones. The gameplay couldn't be more different, however, which I'm happy to finally be able to show you right now. Removing the game's admittedly simple cardboard sleeve will reveal an embossed metal cover with the game's name, and on the reverse side, a game's crest with a sword with wings. Opening up the clamshell-style box to reveal 4 of the game's Tellstones will also show you some flavor included in the game's box in the form of a letter from Dad to Cythria, the playmat of the game featuring the same crest as before, which will unfold to reveal the game's arena, a plastic bag with 2 player helper cards, which will helpfully include the game's 7 symbols, and the rulebook, which is nicely linen finished and illustrated throughout. We have the 7 Tellstones of the game, including 2 scorekeeper glass tiles. I'm going to show you exactly how to play this game, but first I need to set it up, and while that won't take me very long, I would like a little bit of editing. The game's simple layout indicates exactly what you're up to here. While the game centers heavily around just being a memory contest, it ends up being far, far more. All 7 Tellstones start the game face up and off the playmat. The game's rulebook suggests that the eldest player should determine who goes first. On your turn, you have 6 actions to choose from, and these are also helpfully included on the double-sided player card you can keep out, which you should do for the first few games as it also has the 7 different symbols listed on the back. On your turn, you can point to a single stone in the pool, telling your opponent to place it on the mat. It's important to remember that almost universally, while you decide what action you're going to take, your opponent is going to be the one actually doing it. More on why that's relevant in a minute. Your opponent will take the indicated stone and place it face up on the mat on either end of the stones already in play, assuming it isn't the first stone. You can also point to a stone that's face up on the mat as your second action and tell your opponent to hide it. They must then flip the stone over without changing its order in the line. Thirdly, you can point to any 2 stones on the mat face up or face down and demand a swap. These 2 indicated stones will then be exchanged by your opponent. If you've forgotten which stone is which, and you will, trust me, you can take an action to peek at any stone you like. This is the one action you'll do yourself. You can reveal any single stone to yourself only, but if your opponent scored a point with their last action, you could instead look at any 3 stones. The last 2 actions are the ones which will score you points. The first is a direct challenge. Point to any face-down stone on the mat and demand that your opponent name it. They get as long as they want to think about it, and then they declare one of the game's 7 symbols. The stone is then flipped over, and if they were correct, they'll earn a point. If they were wrong, you'll gain a point for yourself. Tellstones is played to 3 points, so don't take this action lightly. The final choice on your turn is to boast. Now here's where the game's marketing hype of not playing the game but playing the player comes in. To take this action, you will tell your opponent that you can name all the face-down stones. They can respond in one of 3 ways. They can believe you and offer you a point, thus ending your turn. They can instead tell you to prove it, which forces you to point to 1 face-down stone at a time, naming it and then flipping it over. If you don't miss a single one, you win the game outright. Fail to correctly name even 1, however, and you've handed victory to your opponent. But Nicholas, you say, what's to stop you from boasting when there's only 1 or 2 stones face down? Friends, I'm so glad you asked. The third option your adversary has when you boast is to counter by stealing your boast. They may proclaim that they too know all the face-down stones, and now you must answer back with either option 1 or 2. It's this last decision that plays to Tellstone's strengths so well. Not only is this a game of memory, but it's also a game of bluffing, and now, my friends, we're off and running. One of the very first games we're all taught as kids is memory. It's such an ingrained experience that tons of games use it as a mechanic, and the best ones find a great spin on it. Hanabi, for example, quite literally turns the game around, and finds that cooperative play brings new life. Tellstones takes the mechanic and brings just a dash of 3-card Monty to spice things up. The symbols on the stones aren't letters or numbers. You can't easily make up a quick mnemonic device for them. And yes, when I was writing this review, I spelled mnemonic right the first time. You can, however, start coming up with stories in your head, and that's exactly what you'll do. In one game I played, no joke, over beers in a literal rain shower with my best friend, he had arranged the hammer and the sword together with the shield next followed by the horse. While that was easy enough to remember, all it takes is a quick swap and suddenly your little story not only doesn't make sense, but perhaps was too clever for you to even remember what's still there. You can even take your bluffing to the next level. Feigning confusion or uncertainty can be a very powerful tool when an overconfident opponent boasts. I've played a game where I tried to see what would happen if I intentionally fell behind and then pretended to feel like I was backed into having to boast in order to avoid getting blown out, and my opponent fell perfectly into the trap, letting me name all 6 face-down stones for the win. Keep in mind, you don't necessarily even need to know them all when you start. You take each stone one at a time, so start with the stones you know, and you can deduce the rest from there. There's one saving grace built into the rules, and I alluded to it earlier. Remember how when you decide to take an action, it's actually your opponent who does it? It's such a genius device. If I want to swap these 2 stones here, I could just do it myself. But forcing my opponent to take the action means that they can pause, puts those stones' images in their head, picture where they're moving to, create a whole new story, all before they actually take the action. Additionally, there's something about physically moving even blank stones that help you to remember them. And the game forcing that tactile response into your opponent's hands rather than your own adds a devilish little twist. If you're hunting for a downside, the game's rulebook is sort of a letdown. It has to be small to fit inside the game's box, and that means designers chose to jam all the text into a tiny font that sometimes borders on illegible given some of the background shading choices. Still, the book's content is great, teaching the game with clarity and even a little bit of flavor. Speaking of which, the theme here is sort of whatever for me personally. There's a whole deal in the rulebook about how this is a Demacian pastime, even going so far as to putting a letter from your dad into the box about how sad he was to see you go off to war, and how he hopes the gift of this set of Tellstones will provide some levity in the war to come. While Runeterra and League of Legends players may get a kick out of this little addition to world building, as I'm neither of those, it didn't do a lot for me. Not that it was annoying or off-putting, it just didn't hook me. It's important to note that it didn't need to, however. Simply looking at this game on the table is enough. I want to note that players coming here with strong ties to that world will find an excellent game that isn't just a cheap tie-in. This game really worked for me, and it's a combination of not only the elegant simplicity of design, both visual and gameplay, but also the attention paid to getting everything just right. These stones are phenomenally well made. The felt playmat with the crest on the back is breathtaking. Everything fits so neatly back into the box that I was absolutely sold the moment I opened the catch. While I'm not sure about price, I could easily see paying as much as $30 for just what's here. It's that compelling. Tellstones, while sitting somewhat awkwardly on your shelf, belies a strong game within, and Riot's production quality is off the charts for a brand new, though admittedly not small, production company. Let's go through our checklist before I give you my final thoughts. In the box, rulebook clear and non-gender pronouns. While unfortunately small in order to fit inside the box, Tellstones' rulebook does a great job of conveying the game's simple rule set and does so with just enough flavor to be interesting. Any more and it would come off as annoying. I did find the book's font to be too small to be comfortably read, and in some places there are sections with a colored background that make it even harder to read, though it could be that perhaps my eyes are not as young as they once were. Still, it uses the third-person you to describe the player and the opponent to denote your foe. Iconography clear. Yes, the 7 symbols need to be instantly recognizable and different from one another in order for this game to work. They do, and it does. Packaging well done. Oh my, yes. The clamshell aluminum case, hard foam liner, and perfect clasp all combine to form something that you'll be happy to keep on opening again and again. On the table, good representation. No players denoted in-game, just you and whoever you're facing. The in-game letter from Dad does reference Cythria, a Runeterra character, however. Component quality, phenomenal. While the core stones are standard issue glass, the Tellstones themselves have an amazing tactile feel to them, and everything stores so neatly in the game's box that it really does feel like an heirloom item. Replay value, very, very high. While there are only 7 symbols on the game stones, the replay value based on your opponent and how the stones are arranged and swapped make for a nearly infinite experience. Fun to lose? Yes. Games are tense the entire time, even from the flipping of the first stone. Trust me when I tell you that your opponents are going to be as confused as you are once 5 or more hit the felt, and when the game is on the line, it's a great feeling to watch as stones are slowly revealed. If it's not abundantly clear by now, Tellstones has impressed me greatly, rising to the ranks of Shobu and War Chest as outstanding 2-player boxes that you should absolutely pick up. Despite the tacked-on flavor in the rulebook, which isn't nearly as ham-fisted as it could have been, the actual game in this tiny metal box is surprisingly simple, solid, and fiendish. I'm Nicholas, reminding you to help protect the game population, always sleeve your cards. Hey everyone, if you enjoyed that video, please hit that sub button and check out all of our other offerings at goodluckhighfive.com. And please consider becoming a patron of the channel at patreon.com/GLHFmagic and help us keep making reviews, videos, and podcasts for as little as $5 a month. We're also always looking for new games to review, so if you make games or you know a company who does and wants to have their game reviewed on Good Luck High Five, please reach out to us at glhf@goodluckhighfive.com and we'd be happy to take a look. You can follow me, Captain N the Game Master, on Twitter and Instagram at CaptainNGM, and follow the channel at GLHF Magic. Remember, please shop at your local game store whenever possible. Until next time, I'm Nicholas, and good luck, high five.